Thank you for tuning into SunScream. Tonight's guest, Goldy Moldavsky, was born in Lima, Peru, and grew up in Brooklyn, New York, where she lives with her family. She is the New York Times bestselling author of Kill the Boy Band and No Good Deed. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, my guest is Goldy Moldavsky. Welcome, Goldy.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's great because when emails pop up from you and you're the only person, and I don't know why, it only pops up as Goldy. So you're like Madonna or Cher in my email.
Yeah, in my Zoom name too, it says Goldie. I don't know how I managed to do that everywhere, but then I'm too simple to know how to change it. I've tried. I've tried to sound more professional in my emails, but I have no idea how to change my settings.
Well, you have the moniker of New York Times bestseller, so it's kind of one of those things that makes you sound professional constantly, regardless of whatever else happens.
Exactly. I could
It's
go
like
for one name.
when you win the Academy Award, right? It's just there forever.
And I have the benefit of being one of the few Goldies in the known universe, I think.
Yeah, definitely a older school name.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
Um, so you said something to me before we went live, and so I want to return to it because I think it's so fascinating.
Okay.
We were briefly talking about The Exorcist,
Yes.
and you said that it was way too scary for you.
Well,
So I want to start there.
you forgot to mention the fact that I watched it when I was like about 6 or
Oh, I
I
thought
was
you were implying that it still was.
I feel like when you watch it at such a young age, it's just like imprinted in you that it's one of the scariest movies ever made, and you're not going to get over it, basically. I really feel like depending on what age you are when you're exposed to certain things is how you're going to feel about it for like the rest of your life. So if I was scared by The Exorcist at the too young age of 6 or 8 or something, I will continue to be definitely scared by it.
See, now I want to have like a viewing party where it's you and I watching The Exorcist and talking about it sometime.
It's just Linda Blair's face. Like I remember looking at
Harsh,
Reagan
Goldie,
in
harsh.
a magazine once. Just an image of Reagan. I had to turn the page. It was too freaky.
Okay.
Some good makeup.
Yeah, the effects. I mean, it's funny because that's almost 50 years. It's 48 years old.
Yeah.
And
But I
it's
really do think it depends on like how young you were when you saw it. Like I saw it recently with my husband, who said it was a good movie, but it wasn't that scary to him. And I feel like it's because he's a grown adult. So like nothing really phases him anymore. But
okay.
watched it when he was my age, I'm sure he would feel differently about it now.
So I normally finish with some of these questions, but I want to start because we're on the train, and that's, do you consume much horror?
Yes, I do. Or,
Okay.
well, I thought I did until I started writing the Mary Shelley Club. And then I realized in my research of all these horror movies that I hadn't consumed as much as I would have liked to consume. Like I always tell people I love horror movies. I always seek them out. But then in my research of like the 100 best horror films, I found that I'd only seen like a third of them, and that horrified me. So I had to go back and sit down and really watch them. But
What's
I
considered
love
the best on
horror.
that list?
Oh my God. One of the articles that I used a lot that I kept going back to was from New York Magazine, where they like ranked 1 to 100. And yeah, there were so many good ones. There were so many in black and white from like the 50s that I'd not seen. So I had to go back and watch those. And then just more recent ones, foreign ones
Oh
that I
yeah.
hadn't seen, like Wreck or like, you know.
The ending of Wreck is amazing. Did you
hmm
watch it? Did you hide under your couch?
I mean, it was a good one for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Like just the weird flashes of the monsters.
Oh my God. Yeah. I love getting scared. That's I just I was trying to capture that feeling in the book where there's an enjoyment to it. You know, I'm not seeking horror out because I like being afraid. I like the release that happens once the horror is over. You know, I love the short shot of adrenaline that you get from the jolt, the jump scares, and then the rush of relief the second afterwards. It's a natural high. I think that's the feeling that I was after.
Okay.
So call me
Um,
afraid, but I love it.
so one thing we do here is we spoil everything. So we because we hope that everybody's read the book and then comes to us after they've read the book. So we think of it more as like a book club kind of discussion.
Awesome. Awesome. I love
Um, so everybody, you are warned. Henceforth, there are spoilers,
it.
and so feel free to talk about any aspect, which I've learned that people don't get the opportunity to do.
Thank you. No, really, it's such a relief because it's hard to avoid talking about all the little details in the book. So this is great.
And you have a lot of them. You've already mentioned that, I don't think a page goes by almost where you don't name drop a famous horror franchise
Really?
or
Is that a fact? I always worry that I drop way too many
I
references,
didn't think it
but
was bad.
yeah, people seem to like it, so that's good. I feel like
It,
it adds that authenticity that you need for the characters.
I was talking to Spencer earlier today, and I told him that certain books that in this series were like good companion pieces to each other.
Oh, really?
And so in Kate Reed Petty's True Story, she belongs to this online group that discusses horror movies. And I was like, it's essentially the Mary Shelley Club, but online.
Right. That might be the next version of the Mary Shelley Club.
Yeah. And I was just like, it's just coincidental in a lot of ways, but it's, or maybe it's just because I'm invested and I've begun drawing parallels where none really exist.
Maybe there are more horror groups out there than we know.
Probably,
There probably are. Yeah.
probably. Um, so I'm going to phrase this in a weird way for you. Why do you like torturing teenagers?
Okay. Yeah, good question. I think it just goes back to not only horror stories, but any good story. You have to torture your characters, even if it's a love story, even if the
Well, that's
highest
the
stake.
most tortured, right?
Love is torture, yes. But even if the highest stakes are just like miscommunication, you got to torture your characters if you really want the plot to thicken. So I don't think I did too much to them, did I? There was
Well, I was also thinking about Kill the Boy
hardly any
Band
murder in this.
because
What was
I was also thinking about Kill the Boy Band because you've got through.
that? I don't know. It's just a simple way of getting the plot to move forward. I always try to start a story by like thinking like I should throw a dead body in there because that's
Like you
gonna
do.
make things more interesting. I
We
think
gotta go to a party at Goldy's. She starts by throwing a dead body in the middle of the floor. Like, all right,
there's a body in the closet. Yeah,
we can get this thing started now.
seriously. I mean, it's a conversation starter. I
It
think.
would be of a sort with someone. um, did you when you thought about and I don't want to get generics, we talked about the genericness of questions sometimes, so you're one of the few people I've talked to who does young adult literature, and I'm curious about that as an active choice more than anything in terms of writing process or anything. I'm more interested in, was that an intent to a directed audience or was it coincidental?
No, that was definitely intentional. When I started writing, I always noticed just the voice that I have in my work is very, very young sounding. And
Okay.
I thought immediately that lent itself much better, obviously, for a younger character and a younger audience. But I enjoy young adult because it's so interesting to me that age group. They're experiencing things for the first time, and everything that they're experiencing is just at a much more heightened level because it's happening for the first time. They're having their first relationships, right, their first traumatic experiences a lot of the time, and I'm fascinated by the fact that it's happening for the first time, and you're really getting to experience that with them. So I love that age group. But eventually I'm probably gonna move on up and
Well, I mean,
branch out, I think. I aspire to, sure.
the crisis kind of in it, if you'll let me, is you have to be, you're so abreast in the book of popular culture.
Yeah.
And you know, in terms of horror, particularly, popular culture, particularly popular social media culture, is kind of death in terms of like having to deal with it. I mean, it's a little bit easier, I think, in terms of writing, but obviously filmically, it's a huge problem. Like, the presence of
Dealing
a
with
cell phone
social media.
alone. Well, any sort of social media in contemporary horror is a huge problem for people to have to like reconcile around, because it can solve the Scooby-Doo mystery in no time.
Yeah. So like having a cell phone on you when you're
Yeah, I mean that defeats a lot.
that was definitely one of the tropes that I was trying to tackle in the book. The book is really full of tropes, and it's a play on all the fun horror tropes that you see in movies and books. And these kids really, they play around with those ideas and on purpose. And also the tropes are thrown in there kind of not by their design. Like I wanted to address it when my main character Rachel is in Central Park, and of course she's going to have a phone with her. But that's the scene, the big climactic scene where everything gets revealed, everything goes down, and we find out who the villain is. And I knew she was going to have a cell phone on her because of course she is. Everyone will. So I just thought, okay, we've got to break it or something. We got to do something, and you know it has to be addressed. So I had her drop it in the snow, and I did a little research and found that, yeah, sometimes that will just turn your phone off and make it not work. Sometimes it'll be fine, but for this book, I needed her to drop her phone and officially break it. But I think that has to be addressed, whether it's horror or not. It's just the times are changing, and if you're going to write a slasher film or book where all your teenagers are getting attacked, you're going to have to address the cell phone problem. But as for social media, I think it's a fun little thing to play around with too. In the book, a lot of kids make fun of the main character by posting memes about her and doing little reenactments of her on TikTok. And I just thought, if that's what the kids are doing nowadays, just throw it in there. It's
That's
relevant.
that's my transition point, was actually TikTok, because I think this is the first horror thing I've seen or read that had anything to do with TikTok.
I can't be the first. I'm sure it's
I don't know that I've encountered. No, you
okay,
know,
I'll take the credit. I will take the credit.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely not common. I'll put it to you that way, at the least. Because I mean, the tendency now is to set stuff in the 90s.
Hmm.
And it's like, you might have a cell phone, but it's one of those crappy flip phone ones that you would never text from, because
Yeah.
it would be 10 cents a text.
Right.
So it is interesting to see one that is so aware of like the
You have to
immediacy
address it.
of now.
You have to address it if you're setting your story in modern times, especially dealing with teenagers. And I decided to use it a little comically, where the kids pretend she's Lupita Nyong'o in Us and like hold up scissors, because there's a scene in the book where she threatens someone with a pair of scissors, and I thought that's probably what they would do now. They would make fun of her using social media.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah.
um Apart from tropes and things, you've got, I feel like, quite a few homages in the
Hmm.
book. I mean, I think the two guys' names, Bram and Freddie, seem to be an
Oh yeah,
homage.
sure.
Um,
Freddy Krueger and Bram Stoker. Absolutely.
um, why those two?
Hmm. Okay. There is a reason. It's super corny,
That's
but
fine. We were in Nebraska. Corny is fine.
perfect. We are doing spoilers, so
All
just a heads
spoilers.
up. this is a major corny spoiler. The Bram one is not a huge spoiler. It's just I wanted to model the core characters after the real group of friends in the history of how Mary Shelley came up with Frankenstein, which is that she went with a group of friends to a villa in Switzerland and they were trying to come up with the best ghost story. And I decided, wouldn't it be cool if I had 5 friends like that who were kind of modeled after that group? And I was thinking Lord Byron was there. There should be a character like, devilishly handsome, devil may care sort of guy. And I was trying to think of B names and I thought Brian. And I thought that sounded kind of old fashioned. If he was a teenager now, he would have something cooler. And I thought, okay, Bram. And it's perfect because Dracula, it's in the theme. So I went with Bram. But for Freddy, it wasn't technically Freddy Krueger. It was because, and here's the huge spoiler.
All right.
Freddie and Rachel are named after Freddie Prinze Jr. and Rachel
Okay.
Cook from She's All That. Because when I realized that Freddie was the bad guy, I thought, oh, it's just like She's All That, where Freddie was like tricking Rachel the whole time, and she goes, "I was a bet, I was an effing bet," and I thought, oh, that's when I came up with Freddie and Rachel's names.
I had such a different interpretation.
I told you it was going to be super corny and not horror related for them.
See,
but
I
you
had
can see now how YA minded my brain is.
I had a whole Freddy Krueger creating these structures of artificial dream-like tests.
Oh, that's a much better answer. Also,
I'll tell you all these things I'm seeing that aren't there. But yeah, that was how my interpretation of that. I was like, yeah, I see what she's saying.
I mean, I did think it was cool that he had a Freddy Krueger type of connection. So it works too.
Well, because I
And
mean that
dress up like Freddy Krueger in the Halloween party.
yes. New York itself is a character in the book. I feel like, I mean, these are, somebody was a recent article came out 1 or 2 days ago. Actually, it was about sort of like the loneliness of the young horror fan or something. That's what it was called, and it was talking about being in this sort of like weirdo isolation in one's teen years, which I disagree to some degree, because we watched horror movies like my friends and I watch them in groups all the time, so I didn't relate to that per se. But it was also, I realized, from the female perspective, and I wondered if that was more common to be if you were a female horror fan and a teenager or a tween, if you were that isolated, and if you had any thoughts on that.
I have to disagree with the article too. I mean, I haven't read it, but just from the headline that you told
I mean, it was
me,
her personal experience.
I find that horror is one of the more social, communal genres that you can experience. Maybe she's talking about horror books, but everyone reads books in isolation. I'm thinking movies, and I'm thinking,
Yeah, she was talking about movies.
Yeah, I think it's like the best, aside from comedy, the best thing you could watch with a group of people. I love watching horror with a group of people. It's like one of my favorite activities because I get really into it. I grab everyone, I scream at the top of my lungs. That's the best way to watch it.
Yeah, the energy in a full theater in a horror movie is so much different.
Of that scene from Scream 2, where everyone's packing the theater, throwing popcorn around. Like, that's the ultimate horror experience.
And in ghost face masks.
I think it's untimely death.
I also, in my notes, have Scream circled because I felt like Scream had definitely its own specter over the novel.
It was definitely a huge influence. Absolutely.
But you define your own rules.
What was that?
You actually put them in there, the classic trope rules from Scream, but then you start to define your own rules that are the rules of the club, essentially.
The rules of the club. Well, I think Scream really redefined that whole slasher genre, and it was so meta and so funny, and yet one of the best slashers ever, I think. Like, it was.
And now we've discovered there's a Freddie Prinze thing. So.
Right. Oh
It's
man.
all going back to the 90s for you, I'm seeing here.
I love the 90s. I mean, I want to see one of those good teen slashers,
Did you
but
watch Fear Street?
oh, I haven't seen it yet. No,
Okay.
it's on my to-do list. It's
Okay.
good.
I just wanted to hear what you had to say.
Oh no.
I
Sorry.
liked the second one.
Okay. I have to check it out.
The first one was okay. The third one I thought really fell flat.
I heard really good things about it. But also
Yeah.
they're all dated, right?
Say
No cell
what?
phones.
I think there's cell phones, but there's flipped ones in 94.
There you go.
If I remember. Juan's looking up in the air like he's trying to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first one interested me to a point, which I think it actually would interest you more, because it's got a lot of similar themes to what you're interested in, including like a whole kind of ghost face kind of situation. The camp one tries to emulate the classic slasher at a camp theme. It's closer to sleepaway camp in some ways than it is to Friday the 13th, but not the big
Oh gosh.
reveal ending there.
That's not good.
And then the third one, tries to do this witch hunt thing that I just felt like didn't really work well. And you could have already pieced together by watching the first two. So I call it the Ryan Murphy effect. You get 2/3 through and you should probably stop.
Poor Ryan Murphy. Everybody universally feels that way about his
And
stuff.
it must be true.
Well, I'm really curious now.
Well, I mean, I also feel like Ryan Murphy hates women, particularly mothers. So look what he does to mothers and tell me he doesn't hate mothers.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't watch too much Ryan Murphy. I stopped around like season 2 of Glee.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm thinking more like American Horror Story.
Yeah.
I end up having to consume a lot more horror than I necessarily want to because I feel like I have to watch it all. And so there's a group of other faculty members. Huh?
It is your burden.
Well, because people will bring it up, and if I don't know it, I'm just like, I look dumb. And so I try to watch it all, and
yeah,
I have regrets.
Saw the first episode of that Ryan Murphy camp one. Should I revisit it or
no?
Okay, heard that loud and clear.
Halston is good. It's not horror, but Halston was quite good.
Is that Ryan Murphy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He does better when he's got a story that he has to follow. Yeah, like the O.J. Simpson thing I thought was actually quite good. I loved John Travolta's kabuki performance. Kabuki or drag is about the only way I could define that performance by John Travolta. But anyway, I've gone way down the road here. I'm like one of your characters all of a sudden. Getting way too into the nuance here.
What was the question?
I don't even remember. I asked if you'd seen Fear Street. I asked if you'd seen Fear Street, and then I critiqued Fear Street by calling it Ryan Murphy-esque, even though it's not a Ryan Murphy thing.
I think there was something about New York in there.
Oh, I said New York is really a character in the book because the kids are so urbane and aspects of New York are needed. I mean, one of the key ones, of course, as I mentioned before we went on air, is Voorhees Street or I forget if it's Boulevard or Street.
I think it's Voorhees Street. I don't know. Voorhees Avenue, whatever. It's Voorhees.
But it exists.
It exists. It's the different spelling, but it exists. Yeah.
How long did that take to Sherlock Holmes out?
No, I always knew it was there.
Okay.
I live in Brooklyn, so I think everything, so long as I live in New York, everything is going to have to be set in New York, just because it would be way too complicated for me to do enough research to really get the feel of any other town. And just the way people speak here, I know is really different from how we speak in other parts of America. So I'd seen Voorhees Street. Anytime I go to the beach, Coney Island, you usually, you could pass by depending on where you live. So I'd known about it, and I thought,
I'm going to use that someday.
One day I'll use it. It was just, I picked East 28th it intersects with a bunch of different streets, but yeah, East 28 worked out for
the
they're the
intersection.
one reference I could think of to use
Yeah,
for.
the 28 Days Later, Cillian Murphy
Yeah. Hmm.
clue. I don't know why that moment stuck out in my brain so much.
Yeah, that was a late addition. That was late to
Okay,
the draft, but
it's a
I
good
realized.
addition.
Thank you. Yeah, I knew they needed some sort of, initiation ceremony or something, which I didn't have when I first started. And I thought there needs to be a defining moment where she officially enters the club. And I thought they've got to kidnap her and take her to a secret location, and they're going to do it at Voorhees Street.
Naturally.
Yeah.
You're from Peru originally.
Yeah.
When did you come to Brooklyn? Because you've been in Brooklyn since, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When I was 5 years old.
Okay. Have you ever like lived anywhere else or just Brooklyn?
Brooklyn.
You're like a Sondheim character. Like I was born in New York. I grew up in New York. I've lived in New York. I see no reason to leave New York.
Is it that obvious? Yeah.
Well, I mean, you kind of you've said
Yeah. Well, I wasn't born here, but
right. You've adopted it.
Yeah, I love New York.
It's interesting. Clay McLeod Chaplin lives in Brooklyn as well, and I picture you all. If he had hair, I would say braiding each other's hair. But writing spooky stories to each other and leaving them in mailboxes or something now. And I'm not going to ask if that's a thing. I'm just going to assume it is.
All right, you go ahead.
Because it makes me happy to think that it might be. We interviewed all these artists back in the winter, and they all live like outside of Montreal.
Really?
And you think, okay, yeah. Like you and Clay live in Brooklyn, but of course you don't really see each other. They see each other. They're in each other's weddings and things.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
No, I know a lot of writers live in Brooklyn, and I never see any of them ever.
Maybe it's a Canadian thing.
Yeah. Maybe Montreal is just a small town. I don't know.
Yeah,
Never been.
Maybe. Did you go to a private school?
Yes, I did. I went to an all-girls school.
Because you seem to have more than a passing familiarity with like wearing uniforms and such.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I didn't go to like a Richie Rich school like is depicted. I went to a all-girls Jewish school in Brooklyn. But it's one of the reasons why it's actually kind of hard for me to set stories in a typical public high school, because I have no idea what that's like. I don't know what a homecoming dance is like. I have no idea. I don't know. We didn't have like
Sweaty? I don't know. I think that's probably a good adjective.
Yeah, we didn't have like a prom. So it's always kind of scary for me to try to set out and start a story in a public school in a very early just at the idea stage of it. I was thinking, okay, they're obviously in a public New York high school, and then I thought, I can't do it. No, so much of this book is going to take place in the school that I needed it to be a little bit more mythical. And I thought, okay, a New York City private school where I could really just make a lot of this stuff up. I mean, I did a little bit of research on it, but once you go private, you can make up, I think, a lot more than people wouldn't know. So that's what I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's again thinking back. Are you a '90s kid? Would you classify yourself as a '90s kid?
Sure, yeah, definitely.
Because I mean, there is that. I mean, Heather's is the '80s, but you've got like Cruel Intentions in the '90s.
Yeah, I named the school
The Craft.
after prep after Cruel Intentions. Will they go to? I asked my editor if that was allowed or if I would get sued, and she was like, "No, nobody cares. Just go for it."
Yeah.
The Craft, definitely another one that I watched, took notes.
Yeah, I definitely got a few Craft vibes.
Great, thank you.
While reading, you don't have quite the horrible tension that emerges in the Craft, but you do get the kids can be dicks. aspect. Um, though I guess the stakes are not quite as life and death as they become in the craft.
Yeah.
When your parents are in a plane crash.
Mm, yeah, but I like the idea of that core group of misfits that feel kind of isolated because of their weirdness from everyone
Yeah.
else. That was appealing to me.
How does like that legacy of Americana with like Skull and Bones to it as well, you know?
Secret societies.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, you've already gotten to why it's called the Mary Shelley Club because you were trying to emulate the historical structure. Um, so in terms of the development of it, when did the core idea come and what was like the seed?
Sure, yeah. It's kind of a funny story. I was going to a book event in the New York Public Library, that big building on 42nd Street, and I
Right.
was there really early. I knew the author who was setting it all up, but I was so antisocial and frozen in my social anxiety that I thought, I'm not going to go talk to him. I'm going to avoid all social interaction and just stalk around the library. And I went down to I think it was the basement floor. Um, it's open to the public. It's not like I was
Mhm.
really sneaking around, but I found this one tiny windowless conference room, and they had this video on a loop, and it was the story of how Mary Shelley came up with Frankenstein. And I had no idea
Okay.
that it was such an interesting story, which is that it was based on a contest that she was having with other writerly friends, and they were trying to see who could come up with the best scary story. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to set this kind of thing in high school with a group of friends who are also trying to come up with the scariest story? But I thought, I can't make them writers because writers are so boring. I can't depict a group of kids trying to write the story
You
that's,
projecting here, Goldie?
yes, we are very boring. But yeah, so I decided, okay, so they're going to try to come up with scary stories, but they're going to act out these scary stories. And it would be a contest to see who could scare, their peers the best. And yeah, that's really where the story came from. And it snowballed from there, basically.
Okay. Um, it's interesting because obviously in that contest too, you had the first vampire story emerges
Right.
as well. Pomodori writes the first vampire story, which is actually based on Lord Byron.
Yeah, exactly. That
Yeah.
handsome fellow. He was the first vampire. Very
Kind of. There's a great a British kids show I talk about a lot, which is called The Horrible Histories.
Oh, I don't know it.
And they do a whole Lord Byron thing, but you think it's like a movie trailer for a vampire movie, but it's like it's parodying Twilight, but it's
Oh.
Lord Byron, and it's not that he's a vampire, he's a poet.
That sounds awesome. I have to check that out.
I'll try to find that clip and send it to you because it's pretty funny. Um, so obviously then because you do shift this into, as you say, sort of upper class setting in terms of the private school, you do have an aspect of accessibility in class that enters into the novel. That's not untypical, I feel like, in either the thriller or the horror genre. I feel like the kids tend to be more affluent as a rule. They're either very poor or very affluent, and I feel like you don't get as much middle class horror in terms of like teenage
Really
horror.
interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
I mean, again, that just might be my, or you'll get like the middle class kid who's injected into the private school or something like that.
Yeah,
But
I
the
wanted to come at it from that perspective just because like I said, I wasn't a rich kid who went to a rich Tony prep school in the Upper East Side. So I couldn't write from that authentic perspective. And I thought, okay, she's just got to be a girl from Brooklyn, not to Mary Sue myself into the book. That's definitely not what I was trying to do, but just to write from a place that I know. I thought, it's going to sound more authentic if it comes from the eyes of a girl who's experiencing all of this for the first time. And in approaching it that way, it kind of informed the some of the themes and the rest of the plot, in that, well, she's so economically different from these really rich kids. And what does that mean when these kids are doing these horrible things and come from such a place of privilege, and she's joining them? But if things go down and they all get in trouble, she and Freddie, who's also from a lower class, ultimately they're probably going to have to pay for everything that they're doing in a much more serious way than these rich kids who are acting in a way where they know that they're probably going to get away with everything they do. So for them, it's all fun and games. For her and Freddie, the stakes are definitely higher. And I thought it was kind of interesting to play with those dynamics within the group.
It's interesting too. I mean, as a young adult author, I'm wondering if you've considered just the idea of the audience and self-identification within these characters in that way, in a class-based way.
No.
Okay. No is a valid answer. I was just, I try to ask questions that I don't think you've ever been asked to.
No, thank you. Definitely, it's a good question. But if I'm gonna consider what every reader is going through, and if they could all relate to the character, then I think it would probably be really hard to pin down exactly who this character is. So I have to choose just one directive and go with it, and hope some people can relate, or that some people could understand where she's coming from.
My favorite thing to come across in the series has been when an author degrades an area of the country, like Buffalo, for instance, in one of the books. And I'm just like, why do you hate Buffalo? Is there just not a Barnes and Noble in Buffalo, so you're not too worried about it? Or
I definitely think about that sort of thing when I'm writing. If I find myself saying an offhand comment like that, or a joke that's really disparaging to one type of person or one area, then I think, maybe I shouldn't do it. And then sometimes I'll just be like, well, everybody hates this place, right? It's not just me. And so everyone
a New Jersey joke is coming up here.
Right. Yes. You understand.
He said it, not me. Don't hate me, New Jersey. Send Matthew Jarvis all the hate mail.
Fun.
I've never even I've passed through. I have no actual feelings about New Jersey.
I feel like I'm punching up with a joke like that.
Okay. Okay.
It's all in the chin. It's all good fun.
Okay. You have one of the more obscure horror movie references in here, which I say it's obscure. It's gaining notoriety and rewatching, which is Night of the Demon. I was shocked to see it, so I wrote it down and underlined an exclamation point at it when I saw it, because your book came out before Shudder re-released Night of the Demon. So I'm curious as to where, how, and why Night of the Demon came under your radar.
That's fascinating. Nobody has asked me about that, but it's so interesting that you say that, because I hadn't ever
I've read the
book. Thank you. I can tell. I hadn't seen it until I started writing the book, and I think I was researching. I knew I wanted to do the seance scene, and I was thinking there's got to be a reference that I can make. It was really important to me for Rachel to see what was playing out in front of her and to think, this sounds exactly like a movie that I've seen. And so I was researching movies with seance scenes in it, and I found that one, and I decided to watch it. I think I'd also seen it on a random list, probably. And yeah, it was a really interesting experience. I didn't hate it. There was one particular scene in there that I thought was really fascinating.
Okay.
Not because anything special was revealed or anything, but
the big controversy with that movie is, should they have ever shown the monster?
Oh yeah.
Especially with what the monster looks like.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
Well, now that you mention it, I think it probably would have been a lot more interesting had they not. Yeah, I mean,
it was made in the time when they didn't really show the monsters.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it made it all a little bit kind of doofy, but there were some characters that that were kind of on the corny side. But I thought the goth girl,
Yeah,
when she does that dance where she's spinning around, do you know what I'm talking
I do.
about? I thought that was a real precursor to Fairuza Balk's character in The Craft.
Yeah, I
I
can see that.
it was really creepy and spooky, and I thought the whole movie was worth it for just that imagery.
I'll put another image in your mind. Frankenfurter is clearly her father.
Really? You
Try
think so?
try to get just visually try to get that out of your head.
Okay. Wow. I like the way your mind works. You're
You can
like
see it now, though, right?
together.
Like
That's
even the
fascinating.
teeth.
Yeah, that's great.
um, yeah, that will never leave your brain now. Yeah,
I appreciate it. I'm thankful for that.
I've been watching The Craft over and over again lately, and I just have begun making the weirdest parallels to The Craft and don't know what I think about it at all, to be
It
honest.
still holds up, I think.
It's got some moments. I like the beach scene with when they summon the deity the first time, and if you read the history of it, the lightning and stuff is actually real. And they
Really?
had like a witchcraft expert, and they're like, "You got really close to an actual incantation there."
No way. So
Yeah,
someone really did their research.
yeah. And so
Wow.
yeah, they had a lot of issues filming that scene, and stuff caught on fire and things for real.
Oh my God, you are creeping me out right now.
I like the whole cursed movies thing. I think that's a interesting phenomenon, like Poltergeist or The Omen. I mean, The Omen comes up quite a bit in this too, but
Another movie I watched as a kid. Yeah.
that was super cursed in terms of like the production.
I know that Poltergeist was,
Yeah.
but I don't know the history of The Omen. No.
Yeah, there's like certain actors' planes were struck by lightning and things. They were flying to Italy.
Oh, chills. Oh, that's freaking me out.
There's a good series on Shudder called Cursed Films that I do recommend.
Okay.
And The Omen is one of the ones they talk about.
Wow.
If you're interested.
I definitely am. Absolutely. God, I wish I'd known this before I'd written the book.
I go
Would
down these rabbit holes all the time.
probably would have mentioned it. Yeah. But yeah, I
I
love
think
The Omen.
I think the
think I
book's probably
watched
doing pretty
a lot of
well.
what was that?
I think the book's probably doing pretty well, regardless of having watched Cursed Films. Just
Yeah.
gonna guess. I'm sad and I'm envious of everyone who got the trading cards.
Ah, trading cards.
It's a thing because Grady just did it with Final Girl Sport Group had trading cards.
Oh, I wasn't aware. I've got to check them out. I haven't read the book yet, but just the title alone, I'm fascinated.
The original Final Girl from Friday the 13th is doing the
Narrated the
audio
audio.
book. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course she is.
I think that's
Well,
fantastic. What a great get.
Yeah, so I like those things. And it's funny because I never was aware of like the swag that came with actually like knowing an author until I started doing this series.
I thought it was maybe just a YA thing, but
Not at all.
I had no idea that it was
Yeah.
part of
Christopher
that.
Triana, who does really violent, gory stuff. That's definitely not YA.
Uh-huh.
He did like a series that had like the books were bound in twine and had a key because that's what she takes to this like creepy guy at the end of the story to trade for a bargain. And I'm just like, people are like trying to outdo each other now, and I'm here for it. I think it's amazing.
I think it's fun, you know.
It
Just
definitely gets it
whenever
more buzzy, I think, in terms of, I don't know. I think people are into that.
I was aware that Chuck Palahniuk did it for a long time at all of his tour stops, where he would just give out these amazing, cool prizes. But
Yeah.
I didn't know it was more widespread now. That's cool.
Yeah. Rachel Harrison sent me like this thing. It's like almost like a matchbook, and it's got a tea bag in it, and it's the witch's brew for cackle. And I thought that was pretty funny. She was telling me that she had hired this wedding company to do it. And she's like, I don't know what they think about me wanting witchy stuff, and I don't really care. But
God, careful. You might,
I
get affected
know,
by something.
right? Don't do it by the ocean. That's the key.
Exactly.
So let's return then to seances, because I was curious if you had ever taken part in a seance.
No, would never do it.
Why?
Would never do it.
Why not?
I believe in all this scary woo stuff. I know that if I were to summon a ghost or play with a Ouija board or something, someone would come and it would creep me out for the rest of my life. I like horror, but I'm also very afraid.
So do you go to like haunted houses or anything then? I'm trying to find where your lines are.
Well, haunted houses are fake. Are we talking about like Halloween?
Well, all right. So in New York, you've got some of the ones where it's, borderline.
I wouldn't go into anything that's real.
Like I had to sign a waiver to go to one in New York one time, and they took my shoes.
But if they're like hired actors to come and jump out at you, that's fun. That's fake. If there is a real abandoned place rumored to be haunted, I would steer clear because I would believe in it 100%. I'm like, yes, there are ghosts in there.
Okay.
I'm not going. No way.
So what scares you then?
Oh my god.
Is it ghosts specifically? And I mean, I feel like I'm skirting a couple issues around religion here too, but well, because you're from a heavily Catholic country and you said you went to a Jewish school, so I'm curious now, to be honest. But
I mean, I definitely believe in things like ghosts. I believe in angels. I believe in demons. I believe in aliens. It's making me sound crazy, but none of those.
I think you got your next book going right there.
Right? None of those really scare me so much, but just I think just subtlety, like just I'm thinking of Michael Myers just standing in the distance.
Yeah.
And just calmly doing nothing. If I were to encounter someone outside in the dark, just standing there staring at me, that would freak me out a lot.
So what's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you?
Oh gosh. I don't know. Oh gosh. Spooky noises, I think. It's not so dramatic, but I remember just lying in bed and there was this loud, indescribable sound from the outside that just like hit me in my core. It sounded like a demon in the darkness. I don't know. Just things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of want to send you a Ouija board or something.
No. I will send it back.
There was I don't know how long, maybe 10 years ago, there was this eBay thing. I think it's called a dub book. I'm probably saying that wrong. Yeah, the book. And they were selling it on eBay.
The Jewish demon.
Yeah. And it was in a cabinet. And it sold for a lot of money, but like it had the longest disclaimer about how this is really haunted.
Yeah. They made a movie out of the book.
Of that eBay story?
I don't know if it was the eBay story, but
okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Jewish exorcist story where it's about demon possession. That's just this one demon called the Dybbuk possessing people. Yeah, there's a lot of people who don't believe in him from the Jewish world and a lot of people who do.
Yeah.
I'm one of the people who do.
All right. So you wouldn't own a cabinet like that.
Freak me out. What was that?
You wouldn't own a cabinet like that.
No way. I would be so freaked out. I would have to research what to do with it, how to properly dispose of it. That's how scared I would be.
There's this company called the Mysterious Package Company.
And they sent you mysterious packages that nobody picked up in the mail?
No, kind of. They send you, it's like a game. And they'll send you stuff, or you can send it to somebody else.
Ooh.
So if they're unaware, and one of the things that they will send to somebody is a demon jar.
Oh no! Oh no!
With instructions.
No.
But it comes like crated in wood with like hay around it and stuff, with no indication that this isn't real.
That is such a good idea for a company.
Yeah.
I would send it straight to the post office. I would march it down, take it myself.
Apparently some of them have been very, very upsetting to people. Neil Patrick Harris, of all people, is like really into their stuff.
I could see that.
So
I think
that's an odd tangent, but in terms of like receiving something weird that you don't want,
I love that. I think that that makes for the start of a really good story. I
that's
think.
how I feel about my buddies. Like
Your buddy?
the toy, the doll, my
The
buddy
Chucky
that
doll?
Chucky is based off
Yeah.
of. I had
It's,
one of those when I was a kid,
oh,
and I
yeah.
saw Child's Play 2 early, and I
Me
saw
too.
my buddy move, and I cut its head off.
You got violent immediately.
Well, I realized at a young age that these people weren't being proactive enough in horror movies to
Yeah,
preventative measures.
that's another type of movie where I feel like you have to be young to really appreciate it. That's another one where my husband watches it now and he's like, you just tear the head off the doll and you're fine. But when you're a kid, it's a good movie. I feel
The
like I
creep
watched all these horror movies because there were little children starring in them.
the creepiest one to me actually in that theme is the Twilight Zone Talkie Tina.
Oh God.
Are you
Yeah.
familiar with that one when he tries to actually
Sure.
like
That's a famous
destroy it
episode.
and can't destroy it?
I love that one.
That
Those
one's
episodes still hold up.
that holds up tremendously well.
Yeah, that's a good.
Um, so let's keep the theme here of Goldie's favorite horror stuff going. You said you did a lot of research. You found this list of 100 must-sees. How many of the 100 did you watch?
Still not a lot. There were so many that I just couldn't find, some
Mm,
of the older ones. And I really felt like I had to stick to just the ones that I was mentioning in the book because even as I was writing, I was mentioning horror movies that I hadn't even seen, and I thought, okay, I'll just get back to this. Now I'll have to watch it before it goes to publication, so that's what I did. But I knew, like for certain movies, like with Rabid, I knew I wanted something really gory, and that was the one that came to mind.
okay.
So I just stuck that one in there, and I thought, okay, I'll have to go back, find it, and watch it. So that's what I did. I found obscure ones that wouldn't make any lists, any good lists, and then I definitely I finally sat down and watched the classics
Okay.
that I had missed.
So let's unpack this a little bit further. What was the most obscure weird one that you did watch?
God. Ooh. I don't think it's that obscure, but it's definitely kind of indie. It was Good Night, Mommy.
Okay.
I think to the general public, they probably have missed it, but
Probably, yeah, because it's not an English movie.
right, that is one thing that'll keep the general public away.
Were you
But
drawn to that because of the kids, or
no, just the foreign aspect, I think. But it did show up on a list, so I decided to check it out.
pretty
So
messed up movie?
what?
It's a pretty messed up movie.
It's messed up. I wasn't the biggest fan. I clocked the twist kind of early.
Ah,
So,
yeah,
but I know they're making a remake. I think Naomi Watts, the new Queen of Horror.
of course. Why not? I
Yeah.
remember speaking going back to the 90s. I remember when I saw The Sixth Sense in theaters. Within 30 seconds, I looked to the people next to me and said, "He's dead."
No, you got it.
It was just really painfully obvious.
Oh
It's
man.
like because even if you're ignoring a person, you kind of look at the person.
Ah,
Like he literally wasn't there to her.
you picked up on it.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I mean, M. Night Shyamalan stuff just doesn't do it for me. But
I love M. Night Shyamalan.
we're gonna agree to disagree then.
I'm obsessed. I'm a huge fan. I haven't seen Old yet, so please
Okay.
don't spoil
Yeah,
it.
I haven't seen Old yet either. That just came out.
Yeah.
Um. All right. What was your favorite of the ones you had not seen that you got to see?
I saw Carrie for the first time. I was surprised by how good it was because it was the kind of movie that is so popular and that you end up seeing like so many clips of that you feel almost as if you'd seen the movie already. So I had just avoided it for so long, and it looked so old fashioned. You think, this is so retro, but then I watched it and I thought the pacing it's at a clip. It moves so quickly,
Yeah,
and
Brian De Palma was very experimental at the time.
I loved it. I thought he did that prom scene where the camera's just spinning around them. Something about the camera work for so many of these movies, like The Shining. I avoided The Shining for so long because just seeing clips of it just freaked me out. But just the way the camera slowly like zooms in or just stays in one place, just it really evokes a feeling of dread
Yeah.
that I think
You're talking about the
freaks me
Kubrick
out more
version,
than
I'm
anything
assuming.
else. What was that?
You're talking about the Kubrick version, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
of
I'll just
course.
clarify.
Yeah.
In Carrie, the actress playing the mom actually thought it was a comedy.
And nobody told her?
Well, she's just like, it's too absurd to be a drama. It's kind of that's why she plays it so over the top, because she thought she was in a comedy.
Oh gosh, but you know what? It works.
Yeah.
Some actors, you feel like they're in a completely different movie, like that aunt from Sleepaway Camp.
Yeah.
She's really in her own campy movie.
Yeah, she's definitely channeling like Joan Crawford or something.
Yeah, in that sense, it doesn't work, but iconic character nonetheless.
So what movie did you watch you wish you hadn't watched?
Oh God, Sleepaway Camp. Now that we mentioned.
The ending.
I've never been more shocked for so many different reasons. Just the layers of shock at that ending came out of nowhere. Most ridiculous movie I've ever seen. Iconic, like I said, but also so bad.
It's funny because a lot of the thought around like transphobia and horror, people peg on Silence of the Lambs, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
Go back and watch.
So many people hadn't seen Sleepaway Camp, and it's
or Dressed to Kill with Michael Caine.
I still haven't seen that one.
Which is another Brian De Palma movie, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like that trope was well in existence long before The Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, definitely.
And it is fascinating to me that that's because I guess Silence, because it won an Oscar, that's where the blame gets hung, I suppose. But it's like, this was, horror also has not exactly been a woke genre historically.
Until Get Out, I'd say. Get Out is changing things.
Yeah, and I actually, one thing I've tried to talk to a lot of guests too, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this, particularly from a YA perspective, is so for the longest time, and even the concept of the male gaze was developed through a discussion of horror movies, particularly 80s horror movies. And now in 2020, moving into 2021, we see a new discussion of the female gaze in horror as this sort of like shifted concept. And I don't necessarily know that it's been clearly defined or a voice has been found for it as clearly as the male gaze, and perhaps because it's just still a new theoretical construct. I'm curious what you think about that moving forward, and if it's something, as you say, you at some point you're going to have to write an adult characterization. Is it something that's in the back of your mind there, or is it even present in your teenage characters?
It's not something that I've given a lot of thought to. I totally welcome it. I would love to see what a horror movie looks like when you're talking about the female gaze. That might be a little controversial, since the male gaze is something that we're trying to get away from, but I'd still be curious to see what the female gaze look like. When I think about the male gaze in horror, my mind just goes to the voyeuristic point of view that you see from so many of the big bad guys, the villainous characters, and the way that the women are often scantily clad and then invariably just murdered. I'm very interested to see what the female gaze version of that would be. But
we have Anna Biller coming on in October, and she did a movie called The Love Witch.
Sure.
In 2016, and a lot of people argue that's the first instance of the female gaze in horror.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm very curious to check it out.
The one that has stuck with me, and I still don't know what to make of it, and a lot of people haven't seen, is called Violation.
Never heard
and
of
I'm
it.
yeah, it just came out a couple months ago, like 2 months ago,
Mm,
and it's definitely a revenge horror movie, so it's in that I spit on your grave kind of vein.
mm.
But it's much more intimate, and it all revolves around the phrase "No, don't stop." And I'm trying to say
Ooh,
that as flat as possible because you get the perspective from both the guy and the woman in terms of as
wow.
a sexual interaction.
Wow.
And I'm just the movie conceptually has stuck with me for a very long time, and that's not usually the case. So
Wow. That
I'm
sounds
real
very
curious.
fascinating.
Yeah, I definitely will caution you that it is not for the faint of heart in terms of both depictions of sexuality and violence.
All right. Thank you for the warning.
Yeah, I definitely would always forecast that one with that warning because it is interesting in that way. But I'm just curious as a female author. I mean, and your primary character is also a female protagonist. Um, where you might see that going and where you might one day deploy it, or if you even would.
Well, now I have to see Violation to see how that was done because I'm so curious about that. But yeah, I was actually thinking about how Rachel is kind of the final girl in the story. And I was wondering if in the end I had done something different with the idea compared to how it's been done before by male writers. And I'm wondering if it was just inherently different because I was writing it, or if it was, more of the same. I haven't come to a good conclusion about it. I think I was because I was following so many tropes throughout the entire story that I just stuck up with that one lane. But it's something that I definitely want to revisit from a different perspective for sure.
Okay, I'm going to ask you easier questions now. Were you expecting Kill the Boy Band to be such a success?
No, no, you never know how these things are gonna hit. But I knew I had a different sort of young adult book with
Mhm.
that one. I knew that it was different from anything else that was out there. I'm not trying to like toot my own horn or anything, but at the moment it came out, there wasn't really anything in the dark comedy, zany sort of lane. So I knew that it was different, and I knew because of the characters and the celebrity involved in the story that it was kind of it was kind of on the commercial sort of vibe. So yeah,
I feel like
I
conceptually, I've seen a lot more of those kind of stories of late too. Like, have you seen Slacks?
no, no.
It's about a possessed pair of jeans inside of like a Benetton Abercrombie store, and it's all the corporate speak you could ever want
Is
in a
that a
movie.
novel or a
Now
movie?
it's a movie.
Okay.
And it's just the funny thing is like you see like a YouTuber get strangled to death by a pair of jeans, and it's
Oh
so
wow.
satisfying. I say that in some of his videos on YouTube. But
How have I never heard of it? Oh
it
my.
just came out not too recently. But last year it came out. And then also another one is like Porno, which I feel like fits this. I mean, the title suggests that it's much more adult than it is, but it's a teen 90s thing,
Mm.
where they find a mysterious film in a movie theater,
Nice. I'm
that
gonna have to
summons a
rewatch
demon.
this. There's like so many awesome movies that you're name dropping right now that I have not even heard of. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I just well, I mean, because I think that they pair well, and I feel like you're in that genre.
thank you.
Um,
I will take that as a compliment, even though I
it
have not
is,
seen any of those.
it is. To that end, I mean, have, will Kill the Boy Band or Mary Shelley Club? Is there a separate future for them that you could reveal to people?
You mean like
Or
adaptations or
yeah,
anything?
is there like a TV series or a movie
Gosh,
forthcoming?
I hope so. I mean, they've been optioned, but I feel like so many things get optioned and never see the light of day. But
Yeah,
That is
Omakatsu is telling us about the development hell of the hunger.
yeah, unfortunately. But Mary Shelley has been optioned for TV, which is great because I always saw it more as an episodic sort of saga than just
Definitely.
ironically a movie, even though that's what they watch.
No, I can see that. I mean, it fits in that like Scream Queen kind of
Yeah.
oeuvre. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you can't tell us who's optioned it.
No, I think I can. It's a MGM TV, but
Okay.
like you said,
Who
development.
knows?
Who knows? Who knows if we'll ever see it? I hope so. I
Okay.
think it'd
So
be a good
what are you writing now?
Okay, so the next book that I have coming out is an adaptation of a classic, a a high school assignment classic, which is Lord of the Flies. It's an
Okay.
adaptation about that. It is
Will
about
that
a
be
bunch of
out?
influencers on an island, but there is no murderous pair of slacks, unfortunately.
Just each other.
Well, I could probably I still have time to add that in, so we'll see.
Or a murderous conch.
Oh yeah, yeah,
My favorite part of the original film version of Lord of the Flies is when just the look on the people's face when they arrive. It's like because it looks like kids playing all of a sudden, and you
yeah,
that weird shift that happens in perspective.
yeah.
So unsettling. When is that coming out?
That should be out in 2022. No
Okay.
final date on it yet. We're still on in the editing phase, but that's the next one. Yeah.
Okay. What's beyond?
Oh, I have no idea. I'm
Okay.
taking a summer break right
Okay.
now, just refilling the well, looking for new
Okay.
ideas.
That's fair.
Mhm.
Some people I ask because some people have like this book a year plan that I've
Uh,
discovered, which just blows my mind.
I don't know how they do that. No.
Yeah, that's a commitment to things beyond my comprehension.
Yeah,
But that they, I don't know.
not me. Can't do it.
What are you reading right now?
Interestingly enough, I'm actually reading Final Girl by Riley Sager. I
Okay.
I never got around to it, and I saw it at the library, and I'm like, yeah, I'm finally gonna sit down and do it. So that's the one I'm into right now.
What are you looking forward to reading that's yet to come out?
Forward to. I don't know. I haven't done my research for that yet. I don't know.
That's fair.
Yeah.
One thing I ask every guest is to tell me a horror blasphemy. And by horror blasphemy, I mean something you like that is horribly unpopular or something that you hate that is very popular.
Horribly unpopular. Does
Yeah,
it have
I want an unpopular horror opinion.
like a trope?
Anything. Mine, for instance, is Halloween 3 is the best Halloween movie.
Oh, that is an interesting take. Gosh. I mean, I do like sequels, but okay, a lot of people don't like Scream 4, and I really liked it. I
Okay.
think all the Scream movies are pretty good except for 3, honestly, but even 3 beats a lot of horror movies. I just think that's such a solid series.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't think off the top of my head.
No, it's great. I like to end with that one usually because it's fun and it's something so different than I feel like you think about because you don't think about like what do I like that people don't and what do they like that I don't very commonly.
Well, okay, here's another controversial one. I
All
don't know
right.
if this is considered horror. Speaking of M. Night Shyamalan, I love The Village. I think it's
Okay.
his best movie. I'm obsessed with it.
I would
People
agree with you that
hate
it's
that
his best
movie.
movie.
I love that. I love the twist. I love the characters. Do you consider that horror?
Yeah,
Okay, there we go.
I would call that horror. I call a lot of things horror that I think are on the periphery
Yeah.
because I think it's a much bigger umbrella than people necessarily give it credit for being.
Personally, I think that movie is more of a romance, but
Okay. You can have more than you can have a comma, but other.
that's true. Yeah.
I mean, technically, Alien is a romance,
Well, anything could be a romance then.
right? They make great Mother's Day cards based on Alien.
The chest buster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you.
This
I
was
enjoyed
really
the book,
great.
and I can't wait to see what you do with Lord of the Flies.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
My pleasure, and thank you all for tuning in. And as always, stay spooky. Thank you for joining us for the special presentation of SunScream. Be sure to join us September 26th for the start of Spooky Evenings.